Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to take a look at the new H5 Flow from NZXT. Now, it's had some minor changes over the H510 that I did review a year ago when it was released. Thankfully though, this time I have the Flow version, which has a perforated front, which we'll talk about in a minute, and a few other funky things that they've done, including an angled lower fan to direct air up to your graphics card. But the thing is, does it work? So we always start at the top and the front, and this is the front at the top because I have flipped the case over, and you can see a combined headphone microphone, USB-C, USB 3.2, and then your power switch with a little white LED ring. Now round on the top, now I can't get it because I've just cut my nails, we have a magnetic dust filter should you want to use it, but most importantly what this does expose is a very offset 240mm fan mount, but dual 120mm fans, and there's a decent gap away from the motherboard, meaning that you can fit a 240mm Aio or a radiator in the roof should you want. Now, I'll talk to you about sizings and stuff and offset and how much drop you're going to get in a minute, but this was quite an important factor for this case because it was something that was missing on the last case, and I think it's going to make quite a difference with the usage. Now, I'll be very brutal and just flip the case straight back over and have a little bit of a rejig. So the front panel itself can come off really easily, and there is a dust filter on the other side of it. Now, these fans from a different brand did not come with the case. With the Flow, the only fans that you get are the weird bottom mounted fan and the rear fan. They spin at 1200 RPM. You don't get any front fans whatsoever, so you kind of have to add them in. And for testing's sake, I don't normally add fans in, but I felt like I had to with this one because otherwise it would have just not shown very well in any of the graphs or anything. So we did add them in. But from the face of where the fan mounts to the dust filter, there is a gap of 60mm. So if you wanted to, you could put your AIO in the front of the case. And you can see that there are little cutouts up here and a little extra room. So you could have your AIO in the front of the case right up against the mounts, and then have the fans on the outside if you wanted pretty easily, or either way really. But either way, you can put an AIO in the front if you want. And because I messed with the dust filter, the front now doesn't want to go back on, but there we go. So you can have them that side, but there is also enough room to put your fans on this side, so you could put a 60mm thick water cooling radiator in the front. The gap for graphics cards is actually 360mm, so if you do need to have fans on this side, then please remember to take 25mm off your gaps, but we will come back to the inside in a minute. Standard layout around the back, 120mm fan, 7 expansion slots. Power supply has to be pointed downwards, and there is a dust filter for it. Has to be pointed downwards because there is no ventilation in the power supply cover whatsoever. Now, if we take the rear door off, there's cables all over the place because I've obviously been working with it and testing with it, but you get 3 NZXT Velcro cable guides or cable ties up the side. There's a lot of these angular fittings as well, which you can tuck things behind, and that helps keep hold of stuff, which is really nice. There's a really large one up here, and I think it kind of helps the door stop bowing and banging. Now, the cables get passed through this gap here, which comes out on the other side of the cover on that side. It's kind of, they don't have grommets, but you can't see them, but it still keeps things tidy, so it does work. The dual 2.5-inch hard drive mount down here is quite a unique one because it does 2 hard drives on a single mount. I don't think we're going to be taking them off too often, but there are plenty of cable guide attachments for zip ties. There's another Velcro tie up here, and this whole section up here can be used for passing cables through. So there's lots and lots of room. The only thing I will say is because of the lower fan, there's not a great deal of room for power supply cables. This is only a 160mm length power supply, which is standard ATX, and there's not a great deal of room in front of it. After the cables, you've probably got about 50mm of room in total. So if you're wanting to put any excess length and stuff underneath to keep the back tidy, it's going to make your life pretty difficult. Also, on the back of the doors, you can see there's 3 tabs. The 3 tabs go in there, so effectively you slide them into the tabs first, then you close the back of the case up and you push in, and then you, as you do the screws up, everything pulls tight. Now, one thing I will say, based on experience, is make sure these are done up properly finger tight, otherwise you'll find the back panel will rattle a lot. So you don't need to get Hulk Hogan on it, or Hulk, the Hulk. Just, you know, nicely finger tight. You don't need a screwdriver or anything, because otherwise you'll find that back panel will rattle. This side panel on this side, tempered glass, nice white ring around the outside, clear glass as well, not tinted. Very nice touch. I like the fact that they've kept the power supply cover unperforated, which is also very nice. It was also nice that the fans that were all included are all white as well. And as you can see, we have that lower fan. Now the idea is with this lower fan is, if we go like that, that is the ventilation for it there. And it's meant to pull air in from underneath your case and help direct it up towards your graphics card. Now this is, yes, it's an old graphics card, but it means that we can compare it with all of the old case tests that we've done, because we have been using the same kit for a long time. So this directs air up. Now this is a blower card, so the fan is just here. So it's in the right angle for having the air directed towards it. Now, as it is designed to have the air directed towards it, I was expecting for it to make quite a big difference on temps. Now, I've obviously added fans into the front of the case. Now, those fans did 1200 RPM, so I set them to max. I set everything else to max. The graphics card itself, we always set to 60% fan speed, and the CPU fan is set to 9 volts through an adapter, so it goes onto a SATA with a fan speed reducer on it. And that's so that literally the only thing that will change the CPU or the GPU temps is how the case is configured. There was about 1 degree's difference from me having this lower fan running to then not having it running whatsoever. So with this configuration, the lower fan isn't as effective as I may have hoped. You may find with a different graphics card, maybe a slightly open blower style, that it may make a bit more of difference. I do know, or you can kind of guess, that by having a look at the way that NZXT have done this and now finally given you a much larger offset in the roof to be able to put 240mm AIOs or radiators in, I think the idea now is that you've got 360mm worth of room here for graphics card, and because you're not being forced to have your AIO in the front, which is then going to pre-warm all the air coming into the case, that this is generally being aimed for more graphics card based systems, because you can obviously have the AIO in the roof and the CPU air goes straight out the top, and then you've got more fans here to cool your GPU. The one thing that I would say is I'm not entirely sure that the fans that are being used are moving enough air. I think that a different fan choice could make the world of difference with this. My experience with this rear fan just hasn't been that great. I've tested a few of the NZXT cases recently, and the airflow, they need this perforated front panel in my opinion. I'm not sure personally that I would recommend the glass version of this case at all. Glass fronted version of this case at all. So definitely you're going to need the perforated version. And I actually think you're going to need some really tasty fans in the front too. Whether you go with some slightly higher RPM 140s or not, I don't know. To utilise this fan down in the bottom though, again, I think a different fan is going to make a difference. I think if you were to fit this out with Noctua fans, the temperatures on the day would have been greatly reduced, and there would have been a bigger difference with a decent amount of airflow coming out of that lower one. So all in all, it ticks all the right boxes on the surface. I still think it's being suffocated, stroke let down by used fans on the day. The fans that I put in the front, I purposely used some very quiet Be Quiet fans so that there is airflow coming in, but they are not turbo torrent fans that are going to massively change the way the case is laid out. I don't think there's any point in me putting sort of like 25, 30 pound airflow fans in there, because effectively then we're going to completely change how the case generally is. So we still want to be able to see whether this fan makes any difference. You could also say that the fans in the front are a little bit too good, because if by turning the lower fan off the graphics card doesn't get much warmer, then that also means that the front fans are already working quite well, because by adding an extra one on, they're not actually making any difference. So there's lots of ways to think about it. I personally am going to go with the fact that the included fans are not that great. I'm also going to go with that if you do end up buying one of these, I still want to play around with this lower idea more. Getting rid of the 3.5 inch hard drive bay that would have been here and putting a fan there is a great idea. It just kind of depends on the way things are in your system. I think if you were looking to build a white system like this and you did end up going and buying some of like the white EK fans or something, it would get noisier, because that's one of the things I do need to stress with this case. It is still a H, which is meant to stand for hush, so it is still quiet, but I think in this regard, quiet has then kind of made it not perform that greatly. So my thoughts overall on it is aesthetically it's very pleasing. I like the fact that they've got rid of the glass and we've now got a perforated front. Ticks a lot of boxes. The angular fan design in the bottom definitely looks like it's a lean in the right direction, but just being let down by case fans. The other thing that I thought as well is that, considering it's almost £100 without two front case fans, I thought that was quite expensive. And I think if you're going to do a case like this, I know they're going to say people are going to add fans in anyway, but at the end of the day, maybe they didn't put front case fans in because they wanted you to put an AIO in. But then if you put an AIO in, you're pre-warming everything again and blah, 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 blah. I think it would have been better. No fans in the roof, extra fans in the front, and then they could have done a high performance version of the Flow and priced it the same as the Elite. I think I probably would have wanted all different fans if they'd done that then though. So overall, great design case. I personally think being let down by the fans that are bundled with it.